Today I wanted to share with you all the story of how I got my first permanent full-time job in Norway and how I turned that job opportunity into a work permit for legal stay in Norway. Hopefully by sharing my story, I'll be able to inspire some of you who are also looking to immigrate to Norway on a work visa and hopefully offer a couple of tips and tricks along the way. So my story begins 6 months ago when I graduated from a university here in Norway. I have already been living in Norway for the past 1.5 years, pursuing my master's degree in human rights from the University of Oslo. However, for the past 1.5 years, I have been living in Norway on a student visa, and because I was graduating, that student visa was about to expire and I would have to get a new one if I wanted to continue staying in Norway legally. My student visa was good until the end of summer, so I had until then to work something out. Now, what I really needed was to transition from my student visa into a work visa. This is easier said than done. I don't know about you, but I didn't just have a ready-to-go job lining up for me as soon as I was done with my studies. I had to actually go out and start applying for lots of jobs, and that process could take a really long time. And that is what brings us to my solution, the Job Seeker's Permit. Upon graduating, I immediately began the process of applying for a 1-year job seeker's permit. This job seeker permit would allow me to stay in Norway for another year while looking for skilled work in my field. A bonus of this type of visa would be that I would be able to work while searching for a job, thereby financially supporting myself during the very long job searching process. As soon as I graduated, I began the process of applying for a job seeker's permit. I started looking for and applying to jobs based in Norway and actually found a part-time job at a bakery that I could work at to support myself financially while I was on the job seeker permit looking for skilled work that would allow me to get a permanent work visa here in Norway. The job seeker visa and work visas in general are quite complicated, but can be very helpful for those wishing to immigrate to Norway for work purposes. It's going to take a lot of explaining to go into more detail about them, so I have made 2 separate videos, one dedicated to job seeker visas and one dedicated to work visas to explain the process to you all more thoroughly. But for now, let's just focus on how I actually found a job in Norway in the first place. Once I had secured the job seeker visa and a part-time job at a bakery to support myself financially during the job searching process, I began using all of my free time to apply to jobs here in Norway. I mostly did this by applying to jobs online, and I used 2 websites to do this, LinkedIn and Finn.no, both of which are very popular for job listings here in Norway. Now, both of these sites are used very often and have a lot of overlapping job opportunities. However, I do think Finn.no has a bit of an advantage over LinkedIn for a couple of reasons. First of all, that website is more often used by Norwegian employers because the entire website is in Norwegian. Employers also tend to post on Finn first and only on LinkedIn as an afterthought if their listing isn't getting a lot of success on Finn. Therefore, there are a lot of jobs that you can only find exclusively on Finn that will never show up on LinkedIn. Of course, there are some downsides to this too. Because Finn.no is an exclusively Norwegian website, you have to speak the language at least a little bit, and most of the jobs listed on there are Norwegian-speaking jobs. LinkedIn, on the other hand, has both Norwegian and English-speaking jobs based in Norway, and you can use filters to search for these type of jobs and find what job fits better for your particular situation. For my side of things though, because I've been living in Norway for the past 1.5 years and taking language courses the entire time, I felt comfortable enough to apply to jobs both on Finn and on LinkedIn. In the end, I'd say I submitted an even number of both English and Norwegian applications to different companies. Of course, I did have to write my resume and CV in Norwegian when it was a Norwegian job, and I even got called into some job interviews where the interview was conducted entirely in Norwegian. A good rule of thumb to follow when doing these kind of job applications on these websites is if the job listing is written in Norwegian, then your CV and cover letter should both be written in Norwegian as well, unless explicitly stated otherwise. If a job listing is written in English, then you're probably safe to submit your CV and cover letter also written in English. When I was doing my job application process though, I created custom templates for my cover letters. These custom templates covered things along the lines of my work experiences and education, and I tailored each one to fit the unique job description that I was applying for. My cover letters always tended to be about 1 page long, and my CV is around 2 pages. The CV covers things along the lines of my languages that I speak, my skills, my references, a short description about my background, my contact details, education history, work history, certifications from past jobs I might have had, and publications and awards that I have accumulated over my years in my academic career. Now, because I have sent my CV and cover letter to countless jobs here in Norway, I have gotten a few tips and tricks to make sure that your CV and cover letter are better received by Norwegian employers. First of all, it is very important that your phone number and address on the front of your CV are both Norwegian. Now, you wouldn't think this is that important, but it really is. I ran into this scenario a lot of times during my job application process. Originally, I had my American phone number listed on my CV, and whenever I got called in for interviews, the person on the other end would always ask me, "Are you located in Norway or are you in the US? Because your phone number is a US phone number." I always had to explain that even though I had a US phone number, I was living in Norway, I'd graduated from a Norwegian university, even my address was a Norwegian address on the CV. But as soon as someone saw that the phone number wasn't Norwegian, they usually would opt not to call you, and I probably missed out on a lot of job opportunities because of this mistake. So I would recommend, if you are applying for jobs in Norway, get yourself a Norwegian SIM card and put it in your phone. They're really cheap and easy to find. Most 7-Elevens sell them right behind the counter, and they're relatively cheap too. I personally use Telenor. It is one of the very popular cell phone providers here in Norway. Now, a second important tip to remember when you are applying for jobs here in Norway is to try to get some kind of Norwegian work experience or Norwegian references you can add to your CV. For me, I did this by getting a part-time job at a bakery, and also my education was there linking me to Norway because it was a Norwegian university. It's really important to have these kind of Norwegian references or past Norwegian work experiences because it shows future employers that you're based in Norway and you're easy to hire. If you don't have any Norwegian work experience whatsoever or any Norwegian references on your CV, it can be a bit risky for employers to want to hire you. They don't know how the process might work, and it could be difficult for them to add you on as an employee. If you have experience showing you're already working in Norway, then it'll be really easy for them to just hire you on. Another thing that you should probably be aware of is that a lot of Norwegian employers, while they do use job listing sites like Finn.no and LinkedIn, they also use career portals when you actually go through the job application process. The most common one I found here in Norway is called Jobbnorge.no. This website is used for a lot of job application processes. When you log in, it asks you to manually type out your CV and apply for the specific job that you want to apply for. Now, this can be tedious because you do have to retype your entire CV into this website, but the good news is if you create a logon, it'll save all of that information for next time. And because a lot of employers use this same website to do their job application processes, you won't have to keep retyping your CV again and again. When the applications weren't submitted through websites like Jobbnorge.no or the company's own website, it would usually be submitted directly through LinkedIn or Finn.no. Most jobs I saw listed on these websites would be there for about a month. Once the job application period had closed, I would say that the hiring process also took about a month. This is pretty standard in Norway, and I think it has to do with the fact that the notice period for most permanent jobs in Norway is 3 months. Therefore, if you're going through a really long job application process, it could potentially help you when you have to give your notice to your current job so far in advance. Even when I was just working at my part-time job at the bakery, I had to give 3 months notice before I was able to leave. Now, you should be aware though, this only applies to jobs that you've been working in for more than 6 months, so if you're just in a temporary job for less than that time, you don't have to do the 3 months notice thing. It's just for more permanent jobs or longer term jobs. Now, a benefit of the job listings being on these websites for such a long time was that I had a lot of time to apply to all of these different jobs. I got into a routine where at the beginning of each month, I would go to Finn.no and LinkedIn and go through all of the job listings I could find. I would save the ones that were relevant to my work experience or education, and I would then slowly go through all of them over the course of the entire month and apply to a couple a day or just a bunch all at once. I would then repeat this process at the beginning of each month and so on and so forth. This essentially became my routine for several months. I would go through these websites, find all of the relevant job listings for myself, tailor my CVs and cover letters to fit those specific jobs, send in the application slowly over the entire month, and repeat the process again. The pattern usually went that at the beginning of each month, I would also receive a lot of emails from all of the jobs I had applied to from the previous month. This would include things along the lines of confirmations that they had received my application, some rejection emails, and even some invitations to come in for interviews. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I really don't want to deceive you guys, so I'm just going to be honest. The job application process here in Norway was very long and very tedious. I was applying for jobs non-stop for 6 months straight. During that time, I sent around 150 applications to different jobs and different companies. And out of all of those applications, I only got 5 interviews, and only one of those became my job, which I'm currently working in now. Now, to put that in perspective, if we're counting up success rates as all of the times I was called into an interview, 5 times out of the 150 applications I sent, That's just around a 7% success rate. That's not so great. So that just gives you an idea of how competitive the job market is and how hard it is to find an actual job here as a foreigner. I remember one time I was in an interview to be a receptionist at a popular Norwegian hotel near the palace, and the hiring manager told me they had 100+ applications just for one receptionist role. So yeah, it is really tough out there, even for service industry jobs. Now, out of all of the job interviews I had, 3 out of 5 of them were English speaking and 2 out of 5 were Norwegian. Even though out of all of the jobs I applied to, the ratio was roughly 50-50 for Norwegian and English jobs. This kind of shows you that as a foreigner, you're less likely to be called back for Norwegian speaking jobs. And that's coming from someone who has lived here for a year and a half and has a B2 level in Norwegian, which is working level proficient here in the country. Out of all of the jobs I interviewed with over the past year, one was an analyst at Yara International, which was an English-speaking job. One was the hotel receptionist job at a popular hotel near the palace, which was a Norwegian-speaking job. I also interviewed for Amnesty International as a fundraising campaigner. That was also a Norwegian-speaking job. And I interviewed for a volunteer position at a company called the Education and Equality Institute. I actually ended up getting this job, and it is English-speaking. But because it is just a volunteer position at an NGO, I'm not really counting it towards the overall stats or success rate in this video because this is a work video. And lastly, I interviewed for the job that ended up becoming my permanent full-time job, and that was as a risk governance analyst for Santander Consumer Bank in the Nordic region. Now, out of all of the interviews I participated in, only the hotel job, the volunteer position job, and the Santander Consumer Bank job made it past the first round of interviews. The interview process, though, was pretty standard for all of the different companies. I would go in and it would usually be 2 people there for the first round of interviews. It would be who would become my future boss, along with either someone from the HR or the boss's boss. They would then proceed to do a short presentation on their company and what the job role consisted of, and then ask a series of very standardized questions related to the role and my past work experience. These interviews would always last around 1 hour, regardless if they were service industry job interviews or if they were more professional job interviews. The standardized questions would usually include things along the lines of why I was in Norway, what I had studied, what I was looking for in a job, why I wanted to work there, what I looked for in a manager, my strengths and weaknesses, times I had diffused conflict at work, what I would do if I was in a conflicting situation at work, and how do I navigate high-intensity work environments. These are just a few examples. If the interviews made it past the first round, I would usually receive an email or a phone call in a couple days, and the next interview would always take place the following week. In the case of the volunteer job, which I ended up accepting and am doing on the side right now, that only took 2 rounds of interviews before I was offered a volunteer contract. In the case of the Norwegian-speaking receptionist job, though, it took 3 rounds of interviews and 3 weeks before they offered me a job. I unfortunately had to decline the offer because I was already planning on accepting a job at the Santander Bank. That process was actually the longest of all of them. It took between 6 to 7 rounds of interviews and well over 2 months before the hiring process was complete. The types of interviews I went through with Santander really varied a lot. It was anything from phone calls to FaceTime interviews to in-person meetings in the bank office. I was meeting with people who would be my future boss or even department heads. Apart from the interviews, I also had to participate in some qualitative exams, specifically a qualitative and a quantitative exam. This included testing my skills in Excel and also my skills in PowerPoint presentations. These were timed tests that were emailed to me. I had a certain amount of time to complete the tasks and then send them back in before the deadline. But yeah, this was a very long hiring process. Just to give you an idea, I got the first phone call asking me to come in for an interview in the beginning of October, and I only received a job offer a week before Christmas. So yeah, like about 2.5 months to go through the entire hiring process and receive a job offer. Lucky for me, because I am currently staying in Norway on a job seeker visa, I am allowed to begin working right away. This helps a lot. If I wasn't here on a job seeker visa that allowed me to start working immediately, I would have to apply for a work visa first before I could start working at the bank. That wouldn't be ideal, considering the wait times for work visas in Norway can range anywhere from 4 to 6 months. and a lot of jobs just aren't willing to wait that long for someone to start working there. Now, despite being able to start working right away on the job seeker visa, I still had to submit a new visa, which was a work visa, to inform the immigration people that I had gotten a new job and could now extend my stay in Norway. There are a lot of key similarities, but also a couple differences between the job seeker visa and the work visa. I can only speak from my experiences, so that is speaking from the perspective of someone who is a non-EU or Schengen zone citizen applying for a skilled workers visa here in Norway. A skilled worker is defined by two things: education or work experience. If you find a job here in Norway that requires that you have a certain type of degree to work there, then you can qualify for skilled work based on your educational qualifications. This can be requiring a certain bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or just having higher education in general. The second way you can qualify for skilled work is if you have a certain number of years of work experience. A lot of jobs usually require you to have 3 to 5 years of professional work experience in a certain field or industry, and if you meet those requirements, then you can apply for skilled work as well. However, in both instances, you have to document this proof to Udi, aka the immigration organization. If you are applying for a job based on educational requirements, this can be documented by providing copies of your diploma and transcripts. If you are applying for a job on the grounds that you have work experience, this should be documented by providing descriptions of your previous roles, your CV, and also previous job offers. For me personally, when I was having my skilled worker visa appointment, I applied on the grounds of both. My job required that someone have higher education, so I provided copies of my diplomas from my master's degree, bachelor's, and my transcripts. And the role also specified that someone who had previous work experience from a bank could also apply. So I also submitted a copy of my offer letter from my old job at a bank in the US, as well as a description of that job. Now, as I said before, there is a lot more that goes into applying for both a job seeker visa and a skilled workers visa. But that's a bit too much to go into in this video, so those videos will be coming out shortly and you should check them out if you're interested in the specifics. But for now, all you really need to know is that once I received this job offer, I was able to start working right away thanks to my job seeker visa, and that I immediately applied for a work visa that would be tied to this current job and allow me to stay in Norway longer. Since this is my first full-time professional job here in Norway, it comes with a lot of perks. First of all, you get 4 weeks of paid vacation time, you get a couple weeks of sick leave, and there's also this system called flexitid, which refers to a flexible time schedule at work. So for example, if I worked late one day by about 2 hours, then I could choose a random day of the week to leave early 2 hours. It's really convenient and really works around people's schedules. There's a great work-life balance here in the country. Another perk of the job is that they do a lot of work from home. It's only required to go into the office 2 out of 5 days in the week. And the rest of the time, if you really wanted to, you could work from home. But the office itself is really nice. It's right by the fjord. There is a lovely cafeteria with lots of great food, and my colleagues are all nice and friendly. Hopefully this video helped to put things into perspective for those of you who are looking to apply for work here in Norway and immigrate here on a work visa. If you're interested in learning more about the job seeker visa or the skilled workers visa, then check out my videos on those. And if not, I hope that this video was helpful. Be sure to use all of the CV and interview tips that were in this video. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again next time. Bye guys!